He was a unique entrepreneur, a very unique American entrepreneur, I want to point out. He wasn't a software engineer. He was not trained in business. He wasn't trained in marketing. But he had all of those innate kind of skills. Steve always had this just persistence, nagging drive that you see in very unique people that can do it and probably sustain it 24 hours a day. If anything, Steve burned himself out doing this. You know, he sort of gave his life to it, and I think that people in the world saw the fruits and the merits of it. At the time when Apple started, it was a time when American consumer electronics had vanished from our shores. It had gone to the Far East. And along comes this little company, these two young, kids next door, if you will, who started this company and started building it very rapidly into a billion-dollar company. And Steve went through, I think, in the public's eye, he went through ups and downs. But from the standpoint that he came into Apple, he seemed like he had the world by the tail, and then suddenly he's out of Apple. When John Sculley surveyed the room as to what Steve should or shouldn't do, I think Bill Campbell and I were the two. We didn't necessarily defend Steve's management style, but we certainly thought he should stay with the company. And when he left, I think it was pretty traumatic. Apple was talking about a lawsuit, and I had enough conversation and confidence of the management staff at that time to sort of talk with John Sculley and the other people at Apple, as well as to say, look, I'm going to talk to Steve. And I told him that I thought that he should sort of hold off and not form his next company for about 6 months and just avoid any kind of public lawsuit. You know, his impetuous nature, he had a hard time holding back on this, and he had already, I think, committed to people. He was willing to risk Apple's lawsuit, which I'm sure could have slowed him down substantially. We had a conversation which I took notes on, and it was that Steve was saying, look, maybe I could be of some help to Apple. I may start a product line in which that would enhance their product lines, and they'd want to acquire us. Of course, we know that a decade later, Apple did acquire Next, and it did help them with their operating system, and it became an integral part of their new technologies. And so that prescient kind of activity, I think, was always, and going back and looking at my notes and then looking at what really came about is really put a big smile on my face. I always sort of joke about Steve being my computer tech. He would come over and he would jiggle things around and fix on things and get it back working for me. When Apple came out with the first iMac, you know, the multicolored bubbles, we have 5 grandchildren, and I bought each of them one of those for Christmas. Molly, who is now a sophomore in college, was 5 years old. She got hers and she played with it all day, and it broke. The dealer said that it was Apple's policy not to simply swap computers back on one that had a problem, that it would take Apple's approval to do this, and that would probably take 2 or 3 weeks. So I sent an email to Steve, and I didn't tell him what the problem was. I just asked him if this was Apple's policy. And literally within half a minute, the phone rang, and picked it up, and it was Steve. And he asked me what the problem was, and I told him, and he asked me the name of the dealer, and he said he'd call me right back. Well, the phone did ring, and about 10 minutes later, and it was the dealer asking me to have my daughter come up and get her new computer. So I sent an email to Steve and said, Steve, I thanked him and said, you know, you made Molly's, 5-year-old Molly's Christmas, and you were a great Santa Claus. And he came back with just the word ho, 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 and a little smiley face. And so that, I think, is the way at least me and my family see Steve. To me, he was just a good friend and a wonderful person to chat with, or just he would continue over the years to call here on weekends and just to talk. And I think those are the kinds of things that I will miss.